Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and that's right, you read the title, you know exactly what it is that I'm reviewing. And yeah, this film that stars the late legendary one and only Don Knotts. And seeing as how this film is celebrating its anniversary, and yeah, definitely one of Don Knotts's, I think, and I'm probably right, that it's one of, this movie is one of Don Knotts' top best films that he's been in. Like, of course, the one with, him as, the Mr. Chicken Ghost, that movie, the Apple Dumpling Gang, the one where he's an astronaut. The list goes on. And this, too, as I said, being one of his top best films that he's done. That's right, guys. I am reviewing, from 1964, The Incredible Mr. Limpet. Yes, The Incredible Mr. Limpet. What do I have to say about this film? Starring, again, not the one and only Don Knotts. It's really good. It is a classic film, from Warner Brothers, and, what this movie had to offer, and, Don Knotts, of course, playing the titled character. Anything that Don Knotts had done, he was just so good. He was so good in. He really was. And a little background, because, yeah, because, in the mid-60s, by that point, Don Knotts started to, focus on his, film career and such, around, 1964, 64 or 5, because for a long time, he had been, a huge part of the Andy Griffith Show. And it was after this movie, and, he was still on the Andy Griffith Show, that he stepped away from being a part of that show, and in the later seasons of the Andy Griffith Show, and especially when it would go to color, he would, make guest appearances. Of course, him still being loyal to the show, and always, whenever he could, make a guest appearance as the one and only Barney Feifel. Barney Five, I almost forgot his last name, but yeah, Barney, so bear with me. And the films that he would go on to star in, and especially after this, I tell you, so, and, to those films that I mentioned, yeah. Yeah, just what goes on in this movie, very interesting, very interesting. I'm sure for anybody who would discover this for the first time and just be so confused as to find out and realize, because Don Knotts' character, the title character, Mr. Limpet, he was once a human, then became a fish. You see what I mean? Because, yeah. Well, hey, movies that would have something like that, you'd just be like, what? But at the same time, movies like The Incredible Mr. Limpet, they would be really good movies and such, And also, a couple of other fun facts before I read the description / the story. Mr. Limpet, I think, without a doubt, it had a huge influence on two other, well-known animation materials, Under the Sea, this, of course, and Disney's The Little Mermaid. And not to mention, because of SpongeBob, the late Steven Hillenburg, the creator of SpongeBob SquarePants, studied the backgrounds of this movie, The Incredible Mr. Limpet, for SpongeBob. And that's nice to see. No doubt about it that, Steven really enjoyed this movie, and again, because no doubt about it that The Incredible Mr. Limpet would have some huge influence on SpongeBob SquarePants. And like I said, not just that, but The Little Mermaid. If anybody knows this, you guys, if anybody knows this, that technically Mr. Limpet makes a cameo in The Little Mermaid right at the end of the Under the Sea song number, where all the fish, like, pointing at Ariel, but she's gone, and if you look in that crowd of fish, you will spot Mr. Limpet with those glasses. Not to mention, a figure of Mr. Limpet is in the Little Mermaid attraction. I think, isn't it both versions of the Little Mermaid attraction, Ariel's Undersea Adventures, like at Disney World and Disneyland? Maybe just Disneyland. I can't remember. But that's nice to see. So, no doubt about it, because how much of a big, huge influence that Mr. Limpet would have for those two underwater animation materials. So, yeah. Okay, enough said. As always, read the description / the story. Aquatic life fanatic Harry Limpet falls into the sea and transforms into a fish, quickly becoming pals with a crab and developing a romantic bond with a fetching female fish. As a human, Henry was passed over for naval service, but now that he's a fish, he seeks out his friend, Lieutenant George Stickle, finding him on a small boat in the Atlantic. Yeah. Henry explains that he can alert sailors when enemy ships are close by, and soon he helps America win World War II. Okay, so the film itself, well, because it first starts off, apparently, because I've seen this in some movies, and you would have too, because apparently, two Navy members, Harlock, being played by the late Andrew Dugan, if I'm saying the last name right, and George Stickle, being played by the late Jack Weston. And Jack Weston, I remember him best being in a if not a true, Twilight Zone gem of an episode, you know what I mean? And he was in another Twilight episode, but the one I'm talking about, that's one of the, top best episodes of the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone, that is. The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, where he played Charlie Farnsworth, and, towards the end of the episode, just him, going, "Look, I swear it isn't me, I know who the monster is! It's a kid! It's Tommy!" That's him. So, yeah. And, of course, he's done a lot of other great films and such. But, yeah, because I remember I remember Jack Weston best for, the Twilight Zone episode, The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, and this, the incredible Mr. Limpet. So we basically see older versions of Stickle and Harlock, and basically they go into one of the top secret vaults, drawers, I want to say, and basically they are searching for this man and how he's in the sea, how they're describing it, he's a fish and so on, and, goes by the name Limpet. So, and it's been a couple of years since the last time they've seen him, and how he served very well for them taking on the Nazis. I think it had been about 3 or 5 years. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Well, because, what happened in 1941, and yeah, so them looking at the pictures, and George, he just can't help but not look at them and such, ugh. And we then, the camera pans down and we see a photo of, this man named Limpet. And then, George talks about, basically, a backstory, and thus, throughout the movie, because how this all happened, and, of course, with the titled character, Henry Limpet, how he went from being a man to a fish. And Henry, when he was a man, a human, he was a bookkeeper. He worked as a bookkeeper. And Henry Limpet, as I said, being played by the late legendary Don Knotts. Yes. So Don Knotts played the title character, and again, he's a bookkeeper at the start of this film, and he is happily married to his wife, Bessie Limpet, being played by the late Carol Cook. Yeah, I think I'm getting the first name right. Carol Cook. I remember her best, not only for this, but she was in in Disney's Home on the Range. She was the voice of Pearl. Yeah, so I remember her best for that, and this, Mr. Limpet. And for Henry, because, well, him being so fascinated with, the aquatic life of fish and so on, him being a fish expert, and how it really gets his wife on her nerves and such. Even their friend, George Stickle, because we see a young George Stickle, and, at one point, because Bessie called her husband, I should say, at work about George, coming over, and a moment where Henry, a little bit early on, Henry dreaming of joining the Navy and such, even though he never got to, and, because of him being a bookkeeper, so, and also because him and his wife living in Brooklyn, yeah, so, and then there's a funny moment where, because there's a lot of women working at this place that he works at, being a bookkeeper, and I think one of the main, ladies working there, screams, and, Henry coming over, and a fish being in the water tank, and, well, that's his fish. He kept a fish in there, so, take your fish to work day. And so we see him go back home with one of his fish, and, how he does have a tank of fish, and, so we see Bessie, and George, he was there already, and he kind of gave Henry a surprise, and how both Henry and George, they're kind of giving both George and Bessie, I should say, that's what I meant. Bessie and George, they're kind of giving Henry a little bit of a hard time, and because, well, they can't stand of him just, being all over the place, knowing about, fish and being a fish expert, he's taking it a little too far, to them, he's taking it too far. And how there is a moment where Henry, he wishes that, what it would be like to be a fish. He wishes he could be a fish. And there is a little song number, and yeah, the song numbers, there isn't that many, because, the song that plays, and, we hear Don Knotts singing it, Henry singing it in his head, I should say, I wish I were a fish. Yeah. It's a short song, and he was filling up the tank with more water, and it was overflowing. And Bessie freaking out over it, and she threatens, by this point, she's had enough, and she threatens her husband to, get rid of the fish, or she's going. And, well, I mean, what is Henry gonna do? Is he going to oblige and just do so? Well, what we see next is, well, they travel on a subway, train and such, because they're making their way to Coney Island. And, well, we see that, well, obviously Henry, he did so by taking the fish back to the pet store. And, he was saying to Bessie and George, the look that the fishes gave to Henry, they felt sad when he took them back and such. And even, for George, because George, he had signed up and been accepted in the Navy, and him talking about, his experience so far with the Navy and the ship, that he can't really speak of that he's on, the name of the Navy ship. And when we come to Coney Island, and they're at a deck, down below, Henry just, watching some fish down in the water by the deck, and still, how he wishes he could be a fish. He wants to be a fish. And and what happened in the song number, I Wish I Were a Fish, because, the lighting got dark and it was a bit of purple, and you heard women singing, their voices. Well, that happening again, and I guess, they're singing to Henry, be careful what you wish for, however they say it. And what happens next? Well, Henry, he fell into the water. We see it, we hear him falling into the water off camera, and Bessie and George, they hear this, and, well, Bessie freaking out that, well, Henry, getting the names mixed up, Henry can't swim, according to Bessie, and George diving in to look for Henry. No luck for George trying to find Henry at first, and George even told Bessie to call the police and the lifeguard, to get help. And we do see, a black figure, like the shadow, I want to say, of Henry. We see him transforming into a fish. Yeah, Henry actually transforms into a fish. And, well, because, the first glimpse of seeing him as a fish with glasses, and I think, the second time George jumped in the water to find him again, and, still having no luck, and he did come face to face with a fish, which that turns out to be Henry. Little did he know at first. Little did George know it was Henry. And again, George just had completely had no luck trying to find Henry, and they believed that he probably most likely drowned, and even his hat, George retrieved Henry's hat and gave it to Bessie. That's all that was left of poor Henry, because again, they think that he is lost and he drowned. Again, little did they know what actually happened to Henry. Yeah, so Henry, seeing that he has become a fish and how he easily knows how to swim. Doesn't take him that long to know how to swim, and, and Bessie said, I couldn't swim, as Henry says. And I think, because he thinks at first that maybe it was a mistake, and, what if Bessie was right? And, and there's a little bit of more chorus singing, be careful what you wish for, and so on. Yeah. And, because Henry just swimming along, and at one point, because, coming up to one part of the ocean in Florida, and with some specific fish that would only swim in those waters in Florida, and Henry trying to introduce himself, hi, I'm Henry, and at one point, because he does, find and meet this crab, which he calls him Krusty. He names this crab Krusty, and thus that's the crab's name. And Krusty, being voiced by the late legendary, voice actor, I should say, because, God, because how much voice work he did, and him being the ghost host, the one and only Paul Frees. Yes. Again, the ghost hosts, Ludwig von Drake, Burgermeister Burger, the original Pillsbury Doughboy, Boris from Rocky and Bullwinkle. The list goes on. I tell you, how much voice work that Paul Frees did. And he was a legend. He is a legend. A legendary voice actor for sure. And, him as Krusty, well, it's Paul Frees. What more is there to say? His voice performance as Krusty, really good, of course, and funny. Krusty being this Krusty Krab, get it? And, well, still, him being like a crabby crab and stuff like that. But at the same time, a little bit later, because both of them, they do grow a friendship and such. Even when, because at one point, Henry did save Krusty's life from an octopus. And even when Henry was in danger from a shark, and what Henry did, and he didn't see this coming because this came out of him, he let out a roar. And basically, the roar that he let out, in the movie, it's established, it's called a thrum. Yeah, the roar is a thrum for the type of fish that Henry is, and him letting it out, and, did that come out of me? Yeah, because, like, roaring at the shark and the octopus snatching Krusty, and Henry saving Krusty's life, and, Krusty thanking him, and again, because they do become friends. And then, like, they make their destination to this, sunken, submarine, yeah, and, even, yeah, because when they make their way there, and to speed things up a little, well, because at one point, Henry sees this, this female fish, like, this pinkish kind of fish that's a female, and how, she almost got, snatched by a couple of fishermen, but, Henry stepping in and saving this female fish's life from these, fishermen, snapping off, like, the fish hook and so on. And the female fish instantly, just like that, falls in love with Henry. And Henry, well, he gives the female fish a name of her own, Ladyfish. And Ladyfish being voiced by the late Elizabeth McRae. Yeah, I think I got the last name right. And she has, yeah, if I remember correctly, she did work with Don Knotts before, because she was in the Andy Griffith Show. Yeah. So she's the voice of Ladyfish that Henry names her, and first naming the crab Krusty and the female fish Ladyfish. And Henry just at first, like, not wanting to really do anything per se with Ladyfish, because he's already married, of course, and, him trying to explain to Ladyfish that, he's already married, and, he was once a man, and just all these things that Ladyfish doesn't understand at first, and Henry trying his best to explain to Ladyfish. And still, with him telling Ladyfish that it, might not work out, for both of them, it most likely won't, like, Ladyfish, like, I think she actually kind of got upset, and, she swam away, and Henry didn't really mean to upset her or anything like that, and thus, she swims away, and, for now, that's the last time that, Henry, sees, Ladyfish. And also, coming back to, up on the surface, with, Bessie and George, because, Bessie, thinking that, well, she's now a widow, even, she got back, the fish tank that Henry returned, she got it back, and, for her and George feeling so bad how they treated him because of his love for the aquatic life of fish and so on. And George even recommending to Bessie that, with the fish tank, that would be a good, like, place to put flowers, I want to say, in memory of Henry, that is. Oh, and also, I forgot to mention this, that, well, because with what Henry said to Ladyfish, how it wouldn't work out between both of them, him and Ladyfish, well, because there was another, like, song number with, chorus about love and such, and how he was slowly but surely, like, falling in love with Ladyfish. But then, like, a couple of times where he was, visioning him and Bessie, right in front of Ladyfish, instead of Ladyfish, he was seeing a portrait of him and Bessie, so there's that. And yeah, coming back to, Under the Sea, I had to. Yeah, Henry, more scenes between Henry and Krusty, and up until, because, Henry discovering, a Navy ship, submarine, whatever, because, again, during World War II, and Henry witnessing, because, fighting off a Navy ship trying to locate and destroy a Nazi submarine. And somehow, Henry found a way, and he actually helped them locate and destroy one Nazi submarine close to the Navy ship. And yeah, and, from there on, because Henry realizing that, he can help them out, and, still, his opportunity to be a part of the Navy and what he's capable of and being a fish and underwater, because, with Navy ships going after Nazi submarines and boats, yeah. And, because, the Navy trying to figure out what the heck that was all about and so on, and how, and to speed things up, because Henry basically calling out to one Navy ship, "Ahoy there!" and so on. And that's where we do see a young Harlock and first contact with Henry as a fish, identifying himself, and how Henry tells them to bring in someone he knows, which of course being George Stickle, and multiple times where Harlock gets Stickle's last name wrong, instead of Stickle, accidentally calling him Pickle. That's funny. So even correcting himself later on, Pickle, Stickle, yeah. And so, yeah, so what happens next is, even Harlock reporting this to the Navy headquarters, to the Navy Admiral, it was, because Admiral P.P. Spewart, if I'm saying that right, yeah. Admiral P.P. Spewart, being played by the late Larry Keating, if I'm saying the last name right. Again, you know me sometimes. And actually, because he passed away the same year that this movie came out. So, yeah, that's interesting. So, actually, no, my mistake. He actually died a year before this movie came out. So, this being one of his last feature films that he did. So, yeah, my bad. Yeah, so again, Harlock reporting this to the Navy headquarters and to the Admiral, and how, they locate and bring in George Stickle, because, again, George being a part of the Navy, but in a different, base of Navy, so he's brought into with them, where they're at, and, because mentioning about someone out in the ocean that asked for the presence of George Stickle, and they tell him that apparently someone out in the ocean, is named Limpet, Henry Limpet, and George just freaking out, because, he thought that, he and Bessie thought he was dead, but no, and little is he about to find out, and when he reunites and meets with Henry, now a fish, and Harlock has George call out to Limpet and George interacting together, and, telling George that it's him, it's Henry Limpet, and one moment where he passes out and such, and Henry asks George to come out on a lifeboat to come towards Henry so they can talk and such together, just the two of them. And, and how Henry, he is wanting to help out, for the Navy to locate and to take on and defeat the Nazis. And, Henry has no choice. At one point, he has no choice but to reveal and show himself to George, for further proof. And George, of course, being surprised as he lights a light on Henry to see him as a fish. And, so, he can't believe what he is seeing. George seeing Henry as a fish. And again, because Henry offering to help out George and the Navy to take on the Nazis and to hopefully finish off World War II to defeat the Nazis once and for all. And, what happens next from there on? Because the Navy getting the assistance/help from Henry to, locate any Nazi submarines and to fire upon them and to know exactly where to locate and, target at the Nazi submarines. And by speaking through a communicator underwater, and also letting out the therm that he has, his fish roar, to give the signal, and so on. And a little montage of that happening, and it's going pretty well. And even another song number, and newspapers and, reports of a fish helping out. And I think, yeah, because Henry visions this, him, of course, being a hero. And we do once again see Henry in his human form, even though, yeah, because he's imagining himself as a human again and being praised and such, and so on. It's pretty funny. And the Nazis find out about, Limpet, this fish that's basically helping out the Navy, America, to defeat them and so on. And yeah, so a couple of, members of the Nazis. The Nazi admiral being played by Oscar Berge Jr., if I'm saying that. Yeah, I think I got that right. And a lot of others that, who were in this film, and most of them were uncredited, because I'm looking at it on the IMDb page, because, there was the Nazi officer being played by the late George de Normand. Yeah, I think I got that right. And, and another Nazi officer being played by the late George Bruggerman. I think that sounds about right. And yeah, and them, of course, speaking in their German language and such, and calling Limpet Das Limpet. Yeah, so they are now aware of this Das Limpet, and, well, they soon plan on targeting him, trying to figure out how to dispose of this fish, to help in preventing, the Navy firing upon them with their submarines. And a couple of Nazi scientists, they built these torpedoes. If they hear the sound, whenever Limpet would let out his roar, well, when he would let that out, these torpedoes would detect the therm, and they would come straight and target at Limpet. So it seems like Limpet may be screwed, but what Limpet does next when that happens, very clever of Limpet. And still, Limpet continuing on helping the Navy and such, and Stickle having a huge part helping out Limpet and such, and basically because Limpet asked Stickle a favor from the Navy, and this being reported to Hairlock, of course, and then Hairlock mentioning it to Admiral Splitter, again, if I'm even getting the name right. And this is during, a huge important Navy meeting with the fleet admiral, the fleet admiral. That's just what he's called, being played by the late Charles Meredith. Yeah, because Hairlock mentions to Admiral Splitter about what Henry requested for, what he wants. He wants to be commissioned, and he also wants to get paid. And it's very sweet of Henry, because he doesn't want the money. I mean, he's a fish, so he is going to have the money be sent to his wife, Bessie. Again, very sweet of Henry, yeah. So, and the Admiral Splitter is just, he doesn't know what to make of this, even kind of shouting at one point, I will not have this, or whatever. And the fleet admiral, of course, hearing this, and he insists on what this is all about, and because of their secret weapon, because Limpet being their secret weapon, and so on. And, well, they tell the fleet admiral what Limpet has requested, being commissioned and, getting paid, and to send it to his human wife, Bessie, because, them learning that apparently a fish is married to a human female and so on. And, well, the fleet admiral, well, he orders for this to happen, to let Limpet have what he wants. In other words, he allows and will give what their secret weapon, what the secret weapon wants. Yeah, so Limpet gets what he wants. He gets commissioned, and money is sent. Paychecks and such are sent to Bessie without her realizing at first. Until, yeah, she really is getting suspicious and she wants to know, and even George kind of letting it out. Like, well, I mean, clearly, because, there had to be a certain point where he had to tell her, and thus he does. He tells Bessie that, well, Limpet is still alive, and he's serving in the Navy, but the difference is, he is, well, I mean, yeah, he is different. He's no longer a man. He's now a fish, and Bessie just cannot believe what she's hearing and such, and how she wants to see Limpet again, but it may not be possible, according to George. But she's very insistent, even when the Navy hears about this, that Bessie being a tough cookie and so on, and how she really wants to see Limpet again and so on. And, which, of course, towards the end of the film she does, but until I get to that. Okay, and to speed things up some more, well, everything is still going along with Henry helping out the Navy and such, up until, because, well, I think, yeah, a stingray, I want to say, yeah, swam by really fast, passing by Limpet and causing him to, lose his balance swimming and fall down, and he loses his glasses at one point, and without him wearing his glasses, it'll be impossible for him to help out the Navy to see and locate incoming Nazi submarines. And he does let out the therm, and this, of course, gets the attention of Krusty and Ladyfish, because early on, Limpet asked Krusty to stay behind in that sunken submarine ship, to keep an eye out if Ladyfish were to return, which she does so, and Krusty getting Ladyfish's attention, and, giving her a message from Limpet that he does love and care for her. And, well, because when they hear his therm, that's when they go and help Limpet. Yeah, Ladyfish goes to help Limpet, and, well, Limpet reuniting with Ladyfish and Krusty and telling them his situation, how he can't see. Even early on, and Krusty, said that, referred to him with him having 4 eyes, because didn't really understand the whole thing of glasses, even like one moment where they discover a mirror in the sunken submarine. That was pretty funny. And even Krusty gave Limpet a nickname, Flatbush. This has to do something with Brooklyn, because I did look it up, and yeah, so Flatbush having to do something with Brooklyn, so that being Limpet's nickname from Krusty, and it's pretty funny. So, Flatfish, and so on. And, well, Krusty offers to help, as he calls him, Flatbush, to be his navigator, for him to see, and while Limpet would do the swimming. And again, Krusty being his navigator, being his eyes, to see where he's going. And even Ladyfish, she is willing to help out Limpet. But Limpet, he's not having any of it. He wants her to stay behind because it would be very dangerous for her to join in as well. And for Krusty, it was pretty funny because he put on some armor to protect his shell. That was pretty funny. And thus, well, Krusty and Limpet, they proceed on, and Krusty helping out Limpet, navigating him and so on. And that sequence where, well, because once again, taking on not just one Nazi submarine, but a lot of others. And, well, this time, yeah, and as I mentioned, that, well, this time the Nazis, because them being aware of Das Limpet, well, they have those torpedoes ready that will indicate whenever he lets out the therm, yeah. And even with the Navy men, and with George Stickle, they're having trouble, locating and getting in contact with Limpet. But, they don't know, of course, what Limpet's situation is, up until, well, he does tell George, until I get to that. So, again, Krusty helping out Limpet, and, well, of course, seeing the Nazi submarines, and, well, Limpet once again letting out the therm, and of course that gets the Navy's attention, and thus them firing and about to fire upon the Nazi submarines. But the Nazis, however, can hear the therm as well, and by sending out those Nazi torpedoes straight at not just the Navy ships, but at Limpet, when he once again lets out the therm, and, well, those antennas stick up, and they can hear it, and thus they charge after Limpet. And like I mentioned early on, Limpet, smart of him to come up with a way to, of course, not to get hit by the torpedoes. What he does, both him and Krusty, and of course, all this being done by Limpet, having the torpedoes follow him, but to, get out of the way and have the torpedoes, well, hit straight at the Nazi submarines. Basically the Nazi submarines having their own torpedoes hit at them, and a smart move on Limpet right there. And just them trying to avoid the torpedoes as best they can, and they're having good luck, having the torpedoes not hit Limpet, but the torpedoes hitting on the Nazi submarines. Even the Navy, they have no idea what's going on, but they suspect, and of course George suspects that, well, obviously this is Limpet's doing, and of course it is. Even there was a funny moment where Krusty accidentally landed on one of the torpedoes, calling for help, to Limpet, and of course Krusty's all right, and about time you showed up, because when he got close to Krusty landing on Limpet, and of course the torpedo hitting at one of the Nazi submarines. And even one shot where there's multiple Nazi submarines and multiple torpedoes, and just doing the therm and getting the torpedoes' attentions and hitting at the multiple submarines. And in the end, all the Nazi submarines in that part of the ocean, because the location that that Navy ship is at, and with those Nazi submarines, is somewhere in Florida. And, well, the Nazi submarines are all destroyed, and it seems like, because they are the Americas starting to win World War II, and the Nazis being taken down, and Henry informing George what happened, and how he lost his glasses and so on. So now he knows, and the same goes for the Navy, and so it all turns out pretty good. And towards the end of the film, because, well, Limpet, he's going to see Bessie once again, and again, Bessie, being very insistent on seeing her husband again, and and for her to actually see with her own eyes that now her husband being a fish, even Limpet, having Ladyfish tag along, and Limpet asking Ladyfish if it does or does not bother her that, he's married and so on. All this that he asks Ladyfish, but to Ladyfish, it doesn't bother her at all. All the stuff that Limpet asks Ladyfish, not at all. And this time, Krusty is staying behind, and, well, Ladyfish helping Limpet navigate him to, well, travel back to Coney Island to once again see Bessie. And Krusty saying his goodbyes to Limpet and Ladyfish, and, Krusty admitting that he's going to miss Limpet, because seeing Limpet as a friend, that's nice to see. So, him remaining in the abandoned, sunken, well, technically being abandoned, but still, the sunken submarine ship, And at Coney Island, and at the same location where, well, because the last time George and Bessie would see Henry as a man/a human at that dock, and where he, fell into the water, and when he became a fish, they're back there, and as well as Henry, along with Ladyfish, and, well, Henry reuniting with Bessie now that he's a fish, and her finally seeing that her husband is now a fish. And, of course, she can't believe what she's seeing. Henry, and so on. And a very, loving and sad moment, and how, well, this most likely, because this pretty much is, this is goodbye for both Bessie and Henry. And, her accepting, of course, her being married to a fish and so on. Yeah. And even Bessie, sweet of Bessie to, well, give Henry a new pair of glasses by coming up to Henry, putting them on him, and, well, he's got glasses once again. Because it makes you wonder, because, I don't know, because I was kind of thinking of this too, like, when watching the film, like, if the possibility that maybe with the help of Krusty and the Ladyfish, could they have found his original pair of glasses? But, of course, that never happened. But, still. And basically, like Henry having the same pair of glasses that he had before, thanks to Bessie. And, Henry saying his goodbyes to both Bessie and George. And, telling George to take care of Bessie. Yeah. And, well, he even told George that, not to have him and the Navy to find him and such, as, he'll disappear. Like, I think, because basically his duty is done. Yeah, helping out the Navy. Because I think, by this point, the Navy and, the U.S. really have been succeeding on taking down the Nazis and so on. And, of course, winning World War II. Yeah. So, again, Henry saying his goodbyes to Bessie and George. Even, like, Ladyfish was telling Henry to, make it quick because the location of the ocean that they're in, too cold for Ladyfish, in that part of the ocean that they're in Coney Island. And a couple of moments where, she's, like, wringing on Henry's tail. That was funny. And, well, with the ending still, because come back to where we were at the beginning of the film, older versions of Harlock and George, and, well, George finishing the story, and, the last thing that Henry said to George, bye, George, and so on, and how, well, they are determined to locate Henry because they require Henry's presence, assistance, etc. And, well, because both of them, including one of the admirals, like out in the ocean, where hopefully they can find and locate Henry, and by calling him out, like giving him a message slash a speech, and, well, sure enough, they do hear the therm, and clearly that coming from Henry himself. And the way the film ends, after hearing that therm, we get, a chorus singing and the camera panning out, and, well, that's how the movie ends, and with the credits rolling, and how, another song number, which being Be Careful How You Wish, like, that song being played a couple of times, and, a re-edition of it at the end of the film during the credits, and with the end showing, but, the end? Question mark, and with the Warner Brothers logo showing. A good way to end the film right there. And funny and so on, just, the end? Like, is that it? Well, I mean, yes it is for this movie. The Incredible Mr. Limpet. What a great / classic film this is, coming from Warner Brothers and starring the late legendary Don Knotts. The film, just everything about the film is so memorable and just so great. The story, the characters, the funny / hilarious moments, and emotional moments, of course. Especially what happened at the end of the film. Henry saying his goodbyes to both Bessie and George. That. With Henry helping out the Navy and, of course, America to take on the Nazis, and how, of course, we won at the end. And the animation, the combination of animation and live action in this, and with, the animation underwater, water and with the fish, everything, and with the animated backgrounds. And like I said, because, you know, the late Steven Hillenburg taking, you know, inspiration and, you know, studying the film's backgrounds for his creation, SpongeBob, yeah. The songs that are in this film, they're pretty good, yeah. Not that many song numbers, but, you know, they're still pretty good from, you know, most notably, I Wish I Were a Fish, Be Careful How You Wish, etc. And, yeah, just everything about The Incredible Mr. Limpet is so good, memorable, and, you know, such a great classic film. And I'm giving The Incredible Mr. Limpet, well, what the heck, 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for The Incredible Mr. Limpet. And what about you guys? What do you think of The Incredible Mr. Limpet itself? Have you ever seen this Don Knotts film? Is it one of your favorite films of Don Knotts? Have you enjoyed it? You know, do you think it's hilarious? Of course, like, yeah, any part of the movie you thought was funny and so on. Just, yeah, everything about this film and what I've had to say. And what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like as always. And so, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of The Incredible Mr. Limpet. More review videos are on the way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I'll see you guys in the next video/review. Take care, happy anniversary to The Incredible Mr. Limpet, and peace out.